Welcome to the Billionaire Lifestyle Podcast with your host, Emmett Muckles. Please visit iTunes, Stitcher, or emmettmuckles.com to listen to all the episodes for free.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Billionaire Lifestyle Podcast. This is your host, that guy, the billionaire, just like you. Today, you woke up, you opened your eyes, you were able to move. Take that as a blessing. So let all those things go and bring in the good stuff. You have given or been given another moment. We don't have the past because it doesn't exist. The future is not here yet, so all you have is the now to live your billionaire lifestyle. Today, my guest is Lora Keleher, self-published
Hi, everyone.
author. What's going on, hon? How you feeling today?
I'm feeling pretty awesome. I'm really glad to be here, Emmett. Thank you for inviting me to your show.
You know, I'm really interested because you wrote a book and it's chronicling a lot of things that a lot of people in this country and around the world can really resonate with, because we are rapidly identifying as a multiracial society. And multiracial doesn't only mean like you got this DNA from someone else who has kind of different DNA from another part of the world. It could mean that you're a blended family. It could mean you've got someone's divorced and now you have these different cultures coming together. What's your story?
Well, I was actually born in Korea in a small village, and I was adopted into the northeastern part of the U.S., but my adopted family was Caucasian, and being Korean, I'm Asian. So growing up, it was really interesting because my family didn't look anything like me.
That can be challenging. Maybe not as challenging as it was some years ago, because it's a growing, people are coming together more. But still, there's this dichotomy that we have, particularly in America, where people see something and it's like, something's different, you know, outside of their norm. So what were some of the things that, and I know you chronicle these things in your book, and your book is
Voices from Across the Sea. And it's about growing up as an interracial adoptee, and it's also about meeting my biological family.
So what was that? First, let's digress, because we're going to get to it. What made you say, I'm going to put this to paper and take my ideas from thought and put it down so that I can share this across the globe?
Honestly, I felt isolated. I felt like I was the only one going through what I was going through and the only one who could relate to my experiences. And so I thought by sharing, I could find out that there were other people like me, other people out there who had been through the same thing, other people going through the same thing, other people who could resonate and understand that even though we may look different, underneath we all have the same emotions and we all struggle with the same sorts of things in life. And I thought that by sharing my experience, it could resonate with other people and create a shared dialogue.
So what part of the country did you grow up? Did you grow up in the LA, Long Beach area?
No, I grew up in the Northeast. I grew up in a small town in New Hampshire. I was pretty much the only minority.
Oh, yeah.
There were maybe one or two others. And so it was very isolating.
How old were you when you first began to realize that, you know, I don't quite genetically fit the stereotype of my surroundings?
I think I was probably 4 or 5, and I was looking into the mirror, and I told my mom, guess what? I'm going to look just like you when I grow up. And my mom had to tell me, you know, that's not going to happen.
So was your mom
Caucasian?
I know, but she's Caucasian. But, you know, sometimes we have traits that kind of lend themselves to each other. Was she blonde or was she dark hair?
She had dark hair like me. And she was of German, Polish, Lithuanian descent.
And your dad was?
Irish, German, and French.
So how did they handle some of these situations? Because, you know, they were probably new to that type of scenario too. I mean, what were those dialogues like? trying to keep you, especially as you move like from like 10 to like 12 and getting into your teenage years?
Oh, yeah. Getting into the teenage years was the hardest because that's when I pretty much encountered the most racism.
Yeah.
Because I think that's when kids are starting to discover, oh, wait, that kid doesn't actually look like me. That kid's different than me. That kid must not be of the same background as I am.
Right.
So I really started to encounter a lot of that during those formative years. And my dad basically was like, just be yourself. And my mom basically was very gung-ho, and she would tell people, you shouldn't talk to her that way. But she would call in their parents because she worked at the school. So that actually kind of made things worse.
Yeah, because then you got that peer pressure because then it gets kind of broadcast and they're like, so that could isolate you more. And, you being an Asian woman, we know that sometimes people fetishize about Asian women. Did you experience any of that? Like particularly in your teen years when you're coming into your sexual being and you're starting to find people attractive and people, I can just imagine.
I did. And I talk about that in my book. I talk about how there's this perception of Asian women that basically Asian women, anyone can have access to an Asian woman. That there is that kind of undercurrent among some segments of the society, that belief that anybody has any kind of access they want to someone who's Asian. And it was really awkward because, I think the first time it ever happened, I was like 12 years old, but I looked older. Yeah. And this guy comes up to me and tells me he wants to buy me coffee and wants to start hanging out with me. And I'm very confused because I'm pretty young at the time. But then when I was older, I met guys who would tell me stuff like, I only date Asians. I only like Asian women. And it's just that whole idea that they would change you out for another Asian woman in a heartbeat.
Wow.
Like they don't actually like you. They like the idea of you.
Right. I can only imagine because I went through some similar things myself. I lived in the inner city where it was predominantly African American. And at this pivotal moment in my life, my mom, for very good reasons, moved me out to the suburbs where all of a sudden I went to a Class A high school and there were probably like 20 African Americans there, where I came from a dominated culture of African Americans before. Did you go through any kind of weird culture shocks throughout this time that you probably have said in the book?
Well, the fact that I'm a minority didn't become apparent to me until like junior high school, things like that, when I kind of realized that most people were part of a dominant culture and I was part of more of a subculture. But I didn't really fit in the Northeast. So because of that, I decided to venture out and I moved to places that were a lot more diverse. And in moving to places that were a lot more diverse, I felt like I could get to know people on a much deeper level because all of a sudden there were other people like me. There were people who were used to being around all different kinds of people. So people would start to get to know me as a person rather than just that Asian girl.
Oh, yeah. It's that Asian girl. Oh, yeah, we know what you're talking about. That's actually a joke in like the African American communities. So, I grew up, when I was in Detroit, it was kind of at the tail of white flight from the city to the suburbs. And so you would have people, and I always say this, it's about culture. Because I had friends who were blonde hair and blue eyed, but they had the exact same swag as I did. They got down to the same music, same clothes, same kind of vocal dichotomy, everything. And someone would be like, Sue. I'd be like, Sue? Yeah, white Sue. And then I experienced the same thing when I moved out to the suburb. Emmett. Emmett who? That black guy, Emmett. So what made you want to seek out your biological lineage?
I was really curious. I think a lot of people who are adopted are really curious. Plus, I was asked all the time growing up, have you met your birth family? Do you want to meet your birth family? What about your birth family? And I was asked this all the time. So it's kind of like the seeds were planted in my head.
Yeah.
But then also it was, I was curious, where did I come from? Is my family anything like me? Why'd they give me up for adoption? I had all these questions that I wanted answered. And I figured if I met them, maybe I could get some of my questions answered.
So what was that journey like? What was your start to identify these individuals who are seriously a part of your life?
Well, what happened was actually kind of strange and fortuitous. When I was 7, one of my dad's coworkers went to Korea for the Olympics, and he brought a letter along from me, just asking if there was anybody that they could find as far as my family. And instead of finding or giving any kind of information, the person there was waiting in the waiting room, and 3 girls came out, and I discovered I had 3 older sisters. So,
it was that easy.
It was actually that easy in my case. Whereas I know for a lot of people, it takes a lot of work and effort to track down the people. For me, they just all happened to be there.
Now, I know there are some people who really identify with your experience, and I don't want to get too deep because they can find out in the book, right? But what did you learn once you encountered your biological family members?
I learned a lot about myself, honestly. I learned that, well, first, they looked like me. They had the same mannerisms as me. And that's something that you don't even expect to see.
Yeah.
Because, I had all these questions, but I wasn't expecting to meet people that honestly behaved in the same way I did, on a real fundamental level. So that was kind of a shock. And that was one of the first things that I saw. I also recognized how difficult their lives had been. And it was just understanding that, like, no matter what I went through in life, what they had been through was so much worse and so much more profound. And just recognizing the extent that they had struggled through life, and seeing that really changed me as a person, because it started making me a lot more grateful. It started making me realize how fortunate I was.
Right.
It made me stop thinking about my issues in a vacuum and start thinking about them on a wider, more global perspective. So
you met them in Korea, correct?
Yes.
So, and that's one of the things that is really important for me. And I wish at least 70% or even 50% of Americans could literally get off this piece of land that we inhabit and go to and cross some water and go somewhere where they are totally not in a dominant culture. Because once you get outside of America, and I'm not talking about just going to Mexico or going to Canada, I'm talking getting off this North American scheme, because it will fundamentally change the way you see things. It will open your heart, and it will give a new term to first world problems. So with that, how did you venture forward? Do you see them? Did you maintain a relationship with them, or what's the outcome?
I wasn't able to maintain a really strong relationship with them, but while I was there, we really got to know each other. And we had an interpreter. The adoption agency actually provided an interpreter because they didn't speak any English. Mm-hmm. Because of that, they weren't willing to be completely open. Because everything was going through someone else, and it's a very private culture.
Yeah.
So I didn't necessarily get all my questions answered, but I got to spend time with them. I got to see what their life was like. I got to see what they were like as people, and it was pretty awesome.
Yeah. Did you understand the why you ended up in the situation you're in?
I did, actually. My father died, and in Korea at the time, women could not own property.
Oh.
Now, and they were farmers. So if you own a farm and you can no longer on that farm all of a sudden, that's what happened to my biological mother. She was a farmer. He was a farmer. They couldn't own the farm anymore. So they had to give all the kids up for adoption. And she actually had to get put in a mental institution because there was nowhere else for her to go.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's pretty insane. So be very lucky that you live in America. I feel very fortunate you live in America and that women can do all the things that men can do. Well, to an extent.
I'm going to diverge here a little bit because we're going through some social changes between the masculine and the feminine in this country, where, you know, women are pulling up for their rights, pulling up for equal treatment, and seeing what you have witnessed in Korea and coming here. Do you think if they went there, it would change the dynamic?
I think it would. I think culturally, it's a long way off because, like, for example, in Korean culture, the oldest daughter has to be married off first. They have to be married off in order. And then once they're married, their role is to take care of the husband and to take care of the husband's parents. And that's, yes. And that's just, that's just a societal cultural thing. So, I mean, to change that long-held societal structure, I mean, if a woman didn't take care of the husband's family the way they traditionally had, that would change the entire fabric of the society. So I think that the fact that the culture is built around traditions like that means that it would be a lot different than here in the U.S.
Yeah.
It would be a lot different to try to promote those social changes.
So all that you've been through, how does this affect your relationships with individuals, be it when you're partnering up with someone or just people that you meet as far as associates?
Well, I think it gives me a lot more depth than a lot of people. And I'm not afraid to talk about subjects that a lot of people consider off limits and to try to connect with other people on a deep level. I mean, I think that's really important to me is when I talk to people, I don't like superficial conversation. I don't like small talk. I like actually finding out about other people and how they feel about things and understanding their perspectives and understanding where they came from and their life experiences and things like that, which I think are areas that a lot of people aren't interested in other people.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's very awesome. Now let's talk about how you developed this book. So you had all this information. How did you organize it? Did you just say, I'm going to start from when I was a kid and I'm going to move forward?
Well, it's funny because I wasn't sure how to structure it at first, but what I did is I alternated chapters. So it starts out, this is me on the plane on my way to Korea. And then the next chapter goes back to the beginning of my childhood. And then the entire book intercuts between the journey in Korea and the journey that I had growing up. And I think by structuring it that way, it makes it a lot easier to read, and it also gives a lot of insight without providing too much emotional information all at once.
So you wrote it like a movie script almost. I mean, I can pick.
Well, I'm a screenwriter, so.
See, that makes sense now because the way you said it, I could see how it would flow before my eyes versus if you're just telling a story chronologically and just, you know, what you get. So here it seems like your book is going to be more visual, and being a screenwriter means you probably wrote it very well because there's so many self-publishers today, but they're not versed in the art of communication from the written word, me being included because I wrote a book too. And then I read it and I was like, what was I thinking? Let me rewrite this. All right. So what are your goals? So with the book, what is your literal intention and what did you put into the universe for this to do? Was it for you or was it for others or was it a combination of both? What is, if you could say, you get to the end of your journey of life and you look back on your book and you go, yeah, I did it.
My goal is to share with as many people as possible so they don't feel as alone.
Yeah.
If it touches people's hearts and they read it and they don't feel isolated and alone, then I achieved my goal.
And you know, that's really poignant of you because quite often I see Asian children with Caucasian parents, adoptees. I mean, a lot because I travel a great deal and I've been in some decent metropolitan areas and I see this quite frequently. You don't see it so much in rural areas, which I wouldn't wish that on any child. You know, if you're obviously different from sight from your parents in a rural area, it can be extremely challenging for you to develop into, you know, a well-rounded human being. Did you ever have to have any therapy?
Oh yeah, definitely. Not gonna lie,
it.
therapy is definitely something I've been through. I feel like it helped me a lot in terms of processing my experiences and understanding who I am as a person.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely have had therapy.
So give me all your information. What's your website? What's your Twitter? What's your Instagram? What's your... I was about to say MySpace.
I did used to have a MySpace.
Who didn't?
So my Facebook is facebook.com/Lora.Keleher. My Instagram is instagram.com/Lora Keleher. My Twitter is /Lora V Keleher. And my website is LoraKeleher.com. So pretty easy. Lora is Lora.
Yeah,
I have a non-traditional spelling. I have the German spelling, thanks to both my parents having German heritage.
Do they speak German? Do they speak German?
My grandma did. We used to sing in German when we were kids.
I could just picture that one. That's a very good one. So are you speaking anywhere? How are you promoting? I know we're promoting here. But what other vehicles are you using for promotion?
I'm part of a lot of adoptee groups, and I'm promoting that way. I'm also promoting on other radio shows.
Okay.
And I'm just doing a lot of word of mouth. I sent emails, mile-long emails to friends, family, anyone who would listen, that sort of thing.
And how can people get your book?
Amazon.
So go to Amazon, look up Lora. Is the V in there as well?
Yep, Lora V. Keleher.
And then,
Voices from Across the Sea.
And make sure you get that. Even if you know someone who has a blended family, just suggest the book to them or just gift it to them. And, you never know what good you can be doing by a simple act. You may piss some people off too, but, they'll get over it eventually and you'll be back at Christmas time. But I want to thank you so much for, one, adjusting your time and being on the Billionaire Lifestyle podcast.
Oh, well, you're welcome. I'm honored to be here, Emmett. I really appreciate it.
And ladies and gentlemen, you have to realize it. You're a billionaire. Everyone always says to me, what's your podcast about? What's the name of it? And I say, The Billionaire Lifestyle. And they say, I'm not a billionaire. And then I look at them straight in the face with no emotion and go, that's a flat out lie. And they go, huh? And I say, think of it this way. When your parents got together, however you were conceived, two pieces of material came together, and then through the energy of the cosmos, a dance began. And what happened was 2 became 4, 4 became 8, 8 became 16, 16 became 32, 32 became 64, 64 became 128, 128 became 256, 256 became 512, and 1024, and 30 days later, you were over 1 billion cells and you weren't even birthed. It's continued from there. If you look at everything, you are fractal. Where do you think we get the self from? Because we start with a cell. Get it? Cell and the F. When you meet someone who you know has gone through that same process, there's something very keen that you must do because all the doctrine reference this. When you look in their eye, and they have an eye like you, or remnant of it, or features like you, basic features, treat them with love, honor, and respect as you would wish to be treated. If you don't think you love yourself, if you don't think you're loved, what you should do is when you get out the shower, when you go into the bathroom, look in the mirror, look at all the wrinkles, the moles, and utter these words, I love you, because you will hear it and you will see it in the mirror, because you have to love yourself first before you can love anyone else. Till next time, I love you all. Deuces.